Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. These are unprecedented times, times that require us to remember our skills as well as our commitment to access, to opportunity, and to delivering quality education to the diverse people of New York. This moment not only asks us to think about how we will support our students as they confront and prepare for a radically altered world, but also one in which the urgent call to address structural inequality, anti-Black racism, rising hostility against Asian communities, and intensified budget concerns demands decisive and concrete action. Even as we have had to face incredible personal and professional challenges, we have the stamina and the will to build a better Baruch College, one that can set an example for the future of higher education. This is the first of many more Baruch College town hall meetings in which we can find important opportunity from among our most pressing challenges. It also represents an important indication of President Wu's commitment to transparent leadership and clear communication. There are more than 500 staff and faculty registered here today. You sent your questions in advance, and working with the communications team, we distilled them to reflect the most common among them. President Wu, Provost McCarthy, the deans of our schools, David Birdsell, Fenwick Huss, and Jessica Lang, as well as members of the President's Cabinet, Catherine Cobb, Olga Diaz, Arthur Downing, Mary Gorman, Sam Johnson, Art King, and Kenya Lee are here, and they are prepared to provide you with answers. This is the agenda for today's town hall. President Wu will share with us the current state of the college, plans for the fall, his charge for the task force on the future, and his vision for the college. Provost McCarthy will then share the task force's recommendation for this first phase. Then we will move toward answering your questions, as many as we can. For this part of the town hall, we've organized your inquiries to correspond with the topic areas and task force subcommittees. That is fall 2020 academics, faculty support, staff support, students' well-being and success, and technical support. With the time remaining, President Wu and members of his cabinet will provide responses to additional questions and concerns. As you know, President S. David Wu is the newest member of our community. His appointment began only 35 days ago on July 1st. Even before then, he has been working hard in search of solutions for the crises facing us. It has been amazing to witness. In May, he established the college's task force for the future so that we will be prepared for whatever comes, and we will be clear, confident, and decisive as Baruch College plans for the years ahead. President Wu has already been named to the New York City and state's 100 Asian Power list of influential leaders, and I'm thrilled to introduce him to you now. President Wu.
Thank you, Shally, and Professor Eversley has been very gracious to agree to host this first town hall, and with all of us, and we are literally starting this first town hall in the middle of a storm, which is sort of a somewhat symbolic to our current climate. And so I'm going to make a brief remark and maybe set the stage a little bit for the discussion that we're going to have today. So I guess in a minute I'll bring out a couple PowerPoint slides, and so that you'll remember sort of where I am in the remarks. And so I'm going to do a little bit of technical work here to share the screen. with all of you. All right. All right, so let me see if I could do this. Okay, so as Professor Eversley mentioned, we are really facing some of the unprecedented challenges, and at the time that we have, and not only COVID-19 and the some of the economic damages that we have all seen and witnessed, and also nationwide, we are seeing this reckoning of the racial injustice in our society. And this is in many ways, when you open the TV and what we have all been bombarded with, the current news, and we are really in the middle of a bit of a national moment here. And so I guess when I joined the college and I went to the welcome event back in February, and this is certainly not something that I have expected, but I guess in many ways I feel while we are in the middle of a crisis, this also opened up some interesting opportunities. And I want to maybe use this town hall to talk a little bit about maybe some of these opportunities, what they look like, and very much like the community to join in and share your ideas and your concerns and your suggestions. And so as Shelley mentioned that back in May, I have put together a task force for the future, and with the help from the Provost McCarthy, with some 23 thought leaders from across the college to help us to envision not only the short-term future in the fall and the spring semester, but also the longer-term future for Baruch. And you may ask, why do we take this moment to rethink and reimagine higher education? And I guess I would, make the conjecture that some of the shifting landscape that we have seen around the country in terms of the higher education, many of the institutions are starting to rethink how they would deliver their education, and different type of institutions obviously have different type of focus and different emphasis and different challenges. And the current situation certainly is turning everything we know upside down. So how do we rethink the future in a way that could potentially have a positive impact? And some people ask me, why do we think in the context of higher education, why not just focus on Baruch? And I do think, however, everything we do is going to interact with really the rest of the world, our colleagues, our peers, not only at CUNY. Whenever you go to a conference, you go interact with your professional colleagues. I think it's important for us to understand that broader context of higher education and what do we do here and how is that relevant to everybody else. And so I guess my introduction to Baruch has been really enlightening and exciting for me, actually. I've met so many committed and talented people, and I think what everybody have in common is that sort of a sense of purpose. And so everybody I met here at Baruch is here for a reason. And I think some of that may have to do with our history, that Baruch has always been challenging the status quo of its time. And I guess one thing come to mind is you think about the type of student population most of the higher education institutions serve, and tend to be either or. Either you serve a highly selective student population These are many of the high caliber institutions we all consider to be. And then you have institutions that serving a larger population of students from all different echelons of society. And these institutions don't typically coexist. And Baruch is one of the very few examples where we not only serve all echelons of society with students from immigrant backgrounds and from all different corners of New York and from society. At the same time, we demand the highest academic standards that could be compared to any top institutions in the country. And this is very, very unusual. And many of you who has been here for years may take this for granted. But for me, as a newcomer to the community, I'm certainly in awe with that awesome combination of being able to serve a large underserved community of students, and at the same time demanding the highest academic standards. And I think we have many, many impressive rankings. And the ones that I think tells a lot of the story is a recent Forbes article back toward the end of 2019 called Elite Colleges That You Can Actually Afford. And Baruch is ranked #1 in the country and by the Washington Daily. And this is what the Forbes article is citing. And I think in many ways, this kind of tells the Baruch story. And it's a very unusual combination of the two. And so that makes us a very different from many of our peers. And I do think this is sort of maybe a time of reckoning, if you will, for higher education, in the sense that, as I mentioned in my first blog and my open letter to the campus community, and I think one of the things that we in higher education are all responsible for is the fact that the American dream is in many ways out of reach for way too many Americans. And a big part of that American dream, at least to me as an immigrant, is about attainment of education. And higher education is probably one of the most significant determinants of the economic status of individual in this day and age. So the higher education, however, overall, unfortunately, you look at the statistics and look at the study, are not doing that particularly well. And I guess there are many studies I could cite, but I guess one of them shows that, for example, you look at the AAU institutions, these are probably some of the most prestigious institutions around the country, public and private. And on average, they serve only about 20%, a little bit over 20% of the students who are Pell eligible. Compared to Baruch, and over 70% of our students are coming from the middle low income families. So that's a very drastic difference. So I do think this is a moment for us to rethink higher education, and not just Baruch, but think about Baruch as that shining example for higher education. And I think that's really quite helpful to think that way. And so the diversity, inclusion, and equity, in many ways, not only we have a diverse student population, and we obviously still have a lot of work to do in terms of diversifying our faculty, our staff, and our ranks. And there are a lot of efforts that I'm committed to behind that effort to make sure that we live up to the promise. And not only our students are diverse, but they also see people like them, and they are inspired to succeed and produce the kind of outcomes that we have historically been producing. So focusing on outcome and transformation is, I guess, in many ways sounds like an obvious thing, but actually somewhat unusual in higher education. You just look at the ranking agencies like U.S. News, and they tend to focus on the input, not so much on the output. The input in terms of how high is the SAT and the GPAs of the student that you have admitted but very few of them measure actually the outcome of the transformation that's being engendered by the institution. And so this is something that also makes Baruch very different in the sense that we are able to maybe make that transformation for many of our students. Examples like the center that promoting clear speech and our career services that make the kind of linkages to many of the employers. So our students not only go through an education and go through that intellectual transformation, but also and also psychologically and have the kind of confidence and the poise to succeed. And so I think focusing on that outcome and transformation is really something that reimagining higher education will help to do and using that Baruch model. And talking about student first, and another thing I have seen in common with everybody that I have met at Baruch and faculty, staff, student, and alumni and donors and so on is everybody think of students first. And so especially at this moment in time, and I think that student first culture not only worth sustaining, but given the environment that we'll be operating in, mostly virtual, a lot of online, and how do we systemize it in a way that take a more holistic point of view. And one of our colleagues, our CUNY colleagues, Kathy Davison, said in one of her articles, and on this point, she said that this thinking about this sort of holistically, meaning that think about access in all its dimensions: technological, intellectual, personal, financial, medical, educational, and cognitive. And so, in other words, think about providing our students not only that intellectual education that they come here to get, but also how do we support them emotionally and psychologically, and so that they will be able to succeed. And many of them go through the kind of hardship that difficult to imagine, but I think we all need to be human first and professor second, and being able to address that especially in the current climate of not only COVID economic wreckage, and as well as the racial injustice. And in terms of empowering our people, and I guess I mean something very specific. We, as you see in the charge for the task force, we are thinking about expanding our tool chest, if you will. And traditionally, we have been using face-to-face classroom education as a primary mode of delivering knowledge. And in the environment that we are in, we are challenged to think a little bit more creatively about how do we broaden that repertoire, if you will, of the tools that's available. And so over this, in the spring that we have been using this mostly synchronous online Zoom and the teleconferencing mode of delivering. And over time, we really need to sort of improve our tool chest, if you will, and there are some additional ways of delivering our education we need to include in our repertoire. One thing come to mind is, for example, could we provide instructional design so that we could offer also asynchronous online opportunities, and in addition to synchronous online. And I'm also very excited about the idea of incorporating some service learning as a complementary to what we already do. And service learning and including things like entrepreneurship and undergraduate research, any kind of a hands-on type of engagement-based learning that we could complement what we already do in the classroom. And so that's sort of what I meant by empowering our people to innovate. In other words, can we build a tool chest, and so that that make it possible. And obviously, to do this, idea alone is not enough. We will need to build a systems infrastructure to actually make that possible. for people to do. And you may ask, well, given the potential budget challenges that we're going to have, how are we going to come up with resources to do this? And frankly, a lot of this is about how do we, rethink how resources are being deployed, and how do we reprioritize how our resources could be deployed in a way that will help us to realize that future. And this is something that, of course, I need a lot of your help and your ideas and your suggestions on how do we get there. And of course, we don't have to do this alone, right? And so there are a lot of partnerships that we need to build, and I have started my rounds of meeting with community members, and meeting with government officials, meeting with our donors and supporters, and how do we partner with others, and that will help to realize our ideas is critically important. And I also think this is an important time for Baruch to think a little bit more broadly. We're here in New York City, and could we open up our doors and not only engage our students with the community, but also in the process helping the community to recover from the wreckage of COVID. And we are going to have a pretty long winding road. And if you look ahead, the next 12 to 18 months is likely to be a challenging time of recovering. And could we do it in a way that partner with community members, with businesses, and with our friends, that will help to connect Baruch to the city even better than we have already been doing. So these are some of the ideas of how do we reimagining that new normal, that new future. And so maybe I'll just put something out there for us to maybe think together about. And this is not really a complete vision, but some of the preliminary ideas I want to put on the table for all of us to think about. By expanding the tools that we use for our pedagogy, could we potentially provide more opportunities for students to customize and tailor their study in a way that meets their interests and their orientation better? And also very importantly, could we think about the faculty, not just teach a class in terms of lecturing in front of a classroom, but think about a faculty curated pedagogy with a rich repertoire of instructional tools. And you can use synchronous online, asynchronous online, and engagement type of learning, and face-to-face discussion, and sort of broaden our view of what learning is conducted and how can we do it in a creative, innovative way. And of course, the service and support for our students, many of them traditionally in the face-to-face mode, may have to be even better supported online and through various different means. And we have to meet them where they are, and especially in the current environment. And probably most importantly, I also feel that we are right in the middle of Lower Manhattan, and how do we leverage the energy and the power of the city even better? Because after all, we are in the middle of the greatest city in the world. And can we connect our students, our alumni, to the core of the greatest city? And service learning, entrepreneurship, and partnership, and these are ways for us to do it, but can we embed that into our learning and into our curriculum, and in the way we conduct our business? And so these are just some of the preliminary ideas, and hopefully get us started thinking. And we have the task force, and they have just pivoted their thinking from phase one of thinking about the fall and the spring semester to the long-term future. And they will be doing that in August, and potentially they would share with you their initial report toward the end of August, and then get all of your input in September and beyond. So we definitely need your best ideas to come forward and to help to paint that picture of what the future may look like. So that's what I have to share with you this morning, and I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to stop the screen, and hopefully we could get the provost is going to share a little bit about what the task force has been doing, and then we'll open up for the Q&A sessions and to answer many of the questions that you have submitted ahead of time, and then followed by open discussion, and hopefully we will be able to address your concerns and your thoughts to the maximum extent possible. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Provost McCarthy. Jim?
Thank you, David. Am I? Okay, I still see President Wu's face on the screen, but Nick, can you?
Yeah, we see your
The
slide.
rest of us see
The rest of you see me, good. Well, thank you all for being here. I can see on my Zoom screen that there are 518 participants in this town hall meeting. So that's an incredible show of interest and commitment on all of your parts. As David mentioned, we've been working with a task force on the future since June 1st. And a day or two after David arrived in the first week in July, the task force presented him with a preliminary set of recommendations that were focused largely, but not entirely, on fall 2020 and how we would reopen in the fall, but also that set us up to look at faculty support, technical support, student well-being and success. And then more recently, we've added to this repertoire specific attention to staff support. So we now have 5 subcommittees that are hard at work formulating recommendations on each of these critical areas for the college. And what you see in front of you are the recommendations that the Task Force for the Future made in its preliminary report that came out, as I said, at the beginning of July. We're now looking to prepare a second report that will come out at the end of August and the beginning of September that will take us a bit more forward in time. We're in the process of pivoting from a short-term focus to a long-term focus. And we've put the Task Force for the Future recommendations on your screen now because we've organized, Shelley Eversley has organized the questions you submitted in these categories relative to the subcommittees and our recommendations. I want to make sure you all know that if you go to the President's page on the college website, you'll see a link to the Task Force for the Future. That link includes all of the documents that the task force has reviewed, copies of all the comments that have been submitted by your colleagues and you, as well as minutes of all of our meetings and agendas of all of our meetings. So there's a full record, including the report, that you can find there. And this is going to guide the questions that we're going to answer based on what you've submitted. Let me just start with Subcommittee 1 first. I think you all know by now that we had made a recommendation that's been implemented that a majority of the fall 2020 activity will be online, not only courses, but also student support services and operations. We clearly defined what we meant by fully online and hybrid and outlined a plan to support the development of more hybrid courses, along with the plan for the development of more fully online courses. And I want to emphasize the word selective here, selective online degrees. Faculty support services looked at how we could better use students to help faculty in their teaching, how we could use faculty mentors, how we could establish and specify expectations for online teaching, and particularly how we could address academic integrity issues in an online environment. We also made a number of recommendations. I won't go through all of them, specifically on technical support for faculty and staff, recommendations around student success in this particular environment, large numbers of recommendations there. And we're in the process of formulating recommendations on staff support. So this is the template that we're going to use as we answer questions. And I'll now turn it back to Shelley Eversley, who will continue to moderate the event and present your questions. Shelley.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Provost McCarthy. If you have in the moment questions, you can send them to, please submit your questions in the chat. So there's a chat box on the lower right-hand corner of your screen, or in the middle, and then you'll see it on the lower right corner, and you can send your immediate in the moment questions to submit your questions, the name, submit your questions. But for now, we're going to look at the questions that you sent in. Again, as Provost McCarthy said, there are more than 500 people registered for this town hall, and many of you submitted questions. We've condensed those questions and organized them based on the subcommittee topics. So the first subcommittee topic is academics for the fall of 2020. And Shulamith Groves asks, how has the pandemic affected enrollments? Alex Parada wanted to know how and whether staff and faculty can access their offices. And Ana Mara Ruiz and many others are interested in the cleaning and safety protocols in place for the building so that people are protected. And members of the President Wu's cabinet, as well as President Wu and the deans, are here to offer answers. And so at this moment, I'm just going to turn with those three questions in mind and hear what the cabinet and the president have to say.
So hi, I'll jump in on enrollment since that was the first question. We are seeing enrollment that in overall numbers looks quite similar to last year. We are less than 150 students registrations behind where we were at this time last year. And you'll recall last year's fall head count was an unprecedented 18,650. So we're on track so far to come within the neighborhood of that. And right now we have about 16,500 students registered for fall. What we are seeing is an increase in the number of graduate students. Undergraduate registrations are running a little bit behind where they were last year. Our continuing undergraduate numbers are on pace with last year. They're actually a little up, but our new undergraduate numbers are slower, particularly among transfer students. And we attribute at least some of that to some of the challenges that our new international students are facing. And most of our undergraduate international students come to us as transfers. And we believe we're going to see some softness in that number. So we're seeing that. On the graduate side, we are up in the number of continuing graduate students, which we expected, but our new graduate numbers are up, and they're up significantly. I have to give a shout out to the graduate programs in Zicklin in particular. They had record high applications this year, and thus admissions, and they are on track to be somewhere between 30 and 50% ahead of registrations for new students for this fall semester.
Thank you.
Kathy, do you want to talk about the second and third question, since they
Sure.
address the operational side of reopening?
For sure, thanks. First of all, hello to everyone, and I hope you all are well and keeping safe, and your family as well. And I also wanted to, because everyone is together and that's a rare event these days, thank everyone for their efforts to really keep the college operating. And I think everyone has just done a fantastic job. So the first question was, can staff and faculty access their offices? The fall is going to look very much like the spring. We're going to continue to have very limited physical access on campus. We'll still have the essential staff that have been working tirelessly, the buildings and grounds people, public safety people, the mailroom people. But for the most part, except for a handful of classes, we're not going to be physically on the campus. That said, we have a process for faculty and staff to access their offices by appointment. If there is a task that they cannot do offsite, but need to access their campus, their office, or to be on site to do. So we have a process. There's an appointment. There's a link to the form that you use and guidelines on the public safety website. It includes healthcare, health screening before you're allowed access, to clear you for access. And that is the process that that we have been using and will continue to use. In terms of the next question related to cleaning and safety protocols, yes, this is very important. The CDC has listed, provided a lot of guidelines. We're currently, although we have limited physical access on campus, we're currently following those guidelines because we have public safety officers there. Obviously, we have mailroom people. We also have people who've come in, done a task, and we've then both before and after they come to their office or to do the task that they need to do, we're instituting those protocols. We're going to have, I just sort of as a preview, because I know that a number of the questions that people have been asking are really going to be addressed by this. There is a campus reopening plan that CUNY has required us to put together. We have a committee that is formulating this plan. The plan is due for up to CUNY for approval this Friday. And then once that plan has been approved by CUNY, we'll share it with the entire campus community. And it covers a lot of the protocols, safety measures, and so forth that we have in place. It covers the anyone who comes on campus must wear a mask. We have health screening protocols. We have office cleaning protocols. All of those things will be addressed in detail in this plan and shared with the entire campus community.
And the fourth question that was asked by a number of people actually was, what's the plan for spring 2021? And I'll take that on and invite any others in the group to join in from the cabinet. Let me just take a step back and highlight what the plan for fall 2021 is. I think by now most of you know that the vast majority of our instruction will be provided online, and vast majority means somewhere approximately at 99% of class sections being provided online, either synchronously or asynchronously, and only about 1% or maybe a little more than 1% being provided in hybrid format that will entail some face-to-face instruction. Most of those small number of courses that will be offered face-to-face through hybrid are graduate courses. So we have retained something that's very close to what the summer was and what the last half of last spring semester was. And we did ask of the departments and the schools what they proposed for online instruction, and the result was this very, very small number. I would say that in the responses we had from the task force and others, that the overwhelming concern on the part of faculty and staff was health and safety, and the overwhelming concern was about limits to that might result from a return to campus. So not only will instruction be remote, but the support services provided to students and staff and faculty will also be remote. Since there are no classes going on, or very few classes going on campus, it doesn't make any sense for any of the other activities other than the essential operations that Kathy described for being on campus. So that means that for fall 2020, we can expect to be working remotely, very largely, if not almost exclusively. And the issue of expectations for spring 2021 is always an interesting one, because the easy but not helpful answer is we really don't know. We don't know because we don't know what the progress of vaccinations might be. We don't know what the progress or resolution of the epidemic might be. We don't know what the state of mass transportation in city facilities might be. But the other perspective to have is that the beginning of spring 2021 is not that far away. If we think about planning for that, including registration, then we're only a couple months away from when we have to begin registration for classes, and a great deal follows from that. So what I'd say to the 500 plus people on this meeting is that we can't provide any certainties. We can say that CUNY has made no decisions about what spring 2021 will look like, but we can ask you to look at what we're doing in fall 2020 and imagine how things might or might not change between now and then. One question that wasn't asked among the questions you were submitted, but I heard in other settings, was when will we know? If we don't know now, when can we know? When can we make a decision? And again, we have to waffle on the answer to that, but I heard overwhelmingly a desire on people's part, students, staff, and faculty, for us to make decisions about spring 2021 as early as possible. One of the challenges, and as Kathy mentioned, we faced this in March when we were given 10 days to pivot to a fully remote operation. We faced it again recently when the official word that we would be largely online in the fall came just about a month ago, or within the last month. So we'll do everything we can to get those decisions made and get word out much sooner regarding spring semester.
So maybe I'll just jump in and give you a little bit of a high level indication. And so, of course, we have almost weekly calls with the chancellor, with other CUNY college presidents, and so on. And I think it's fair to say that the overall operational priority is health and safety of the people. And so the instruction that we have got very clearly, the guideline for the fall is to keep as few people on campus as possible, period. And that's a very clear indication that we got. And that's why we're calling it is a limited reopening plan, and is really in many ways very similar to the situation that you have been experiencing in the past couple of months. And as far as spring goes, and yes, we don't know, but as Jim said, it's not really that far away, and we can certainly see the signals, and we can see the patterns, and I think all of us have to sort of read these signals in a way that would allow us to function, especially in our areas of responsibility. And so I guess I'll leave it at that. But obviously at the same time, our strategy when I told my leadership team is that number one is about transparency and communication and sharing, right? So we're going to tell you whatever we know, and so that you get as many of the signals as we get, and we are all grown adults, and at the end of the day, we have to make that assessment and sort of plan our lives and our responsibilities accordingly. And so the best we can do is to share with you as frequently and as thoroughly as possible. And so that's kind of where we stand on that. So back to you, Shelley, and sorry to take so long to answer the first set of questions.
Thanks, President Wu. The second subcommittee topic is faculty support. And in the effort to sort of manage time, I'm going to name 2 questions and then ask the deans to send the communication to the schools and the chairs for these answers. I know I've seen the answers, and I know some of us as faculty and staff have seen them. The first 2 questions were, are we allowed to require students to show their faces on camera? That's from Esther Allen. And the other from Andrea Mila Mainarova. Sorry, Andrea, if I mispronounced your name. She wants to know if we can schedule in-person testing. And I'm just gonna ask the deans if they can help, and the Provost McCarthy, if they can help send the standards and the answers to those questions to various faculty. The questions now that everyone wants to know is, what's the situation for adjuncts? What's the status in terms of layoffs, et cetera? Can those adjuncts who are not teaching in the fall maintain their email and library access? The other question that kept coming up was, because of the additional work, is there a plan to cap class sizes or to provide teaching assistance for larger classes?
So maybe the first question I'll ask Arthur Downing to help answer in terms of the what's our general policy in terms of access by adjuncts to who are not teaching, whether they would maintain the email and library access and so on.
The general policy is that we don't do it. However, we extended the adjuncts expiration dates for the spring, and we will do the same for the fall, so that we realize some of the instruction that has been done remotely is requiring students and faculty to be in communication after the normal expiration date. So we'll work with the deans and the tech coordinators in the school and make sure that the adjuncts continue to have access.
Great, and Jen, you have something to share about the second question about class sizes and so on?
Well, and about the first as well, David, I think on just this is consistent with what Mary Gorman said about enrollment. Our enrollment was, I'll add one fact to what she said, and that is that for the summer terms, our enrollment was also up by 25%, roughly. I might not have the exact number. So we've actually experienced an increase in enrollment in the summer, and our enrollment for the fall is set, as Mary said, for undergraduates, probably to be on target or close to what we had last year. And last year was a record year. So we're not experiencing the declines in enrollment that are being experienced at other places outside of CUNY and within CUNY. So we did not non-reappoint large numbers of adjuncts in the way that other institutions did. In fact, the only adjuncts who were not reappointed, there were changes in hours, but those happen all the time. There were non-reappointments because of changing curricular needs. Those happen all the time. But if you look at the overall numbers, there hasn't been any substantial change in the numbers of adjuncts at Baruch. And I don't expect there to be any going forward for next year. Now, on the additional work, there is no question that this transition has produced additional work for many people teaching. It's unquestionable. The plan, and if you look back to the recommendations of the faculty support subcommittee from the task force, the plan is very definitely to provide additional support for faculty teaching larger online sections. And that will take the form of student support, faculty mentorship support. This is all being done in very rapid time, but we certainly expect to have some of these additional supports in place before first semester begins and throughout the fall semester. One of the things I want to also draw people's attention to, I know because of the uptake on it that participation has been extensive, but the Center for Teaching and Learning, the Schwartz Communications Institute have all run multiple faculty development programs this summer. Hundreds of faculty, full-time and adjunct, have participated in those. And I know that a number of the departments and schools within the college have run their own faculty development efforts. So I'd urge all faculty to make sure they're fully aware of all of the opportunities that are out there and participating in them. I'm about to take my next faculty development workshop tomorrow on using Zoom to help me teach this fall. So providing additional services to faculty has been an essential part of the task force's work and will continue to be. And so I expect there'll be more details on what we'll do with that in the report that we'll have at the end of August. Capping class sizes, I may let the deans, I don't know if anybody has anything to contribute to that. That's obviously a challenge because although we're not engaging in wide scale layoffs or any layoffs at all of adjunct faculty, there are limits to how many new sections we can provide because of budget issues.
Jim, when you answer this, can you just give us a quick yes or no? My chat is blowing up. Everyone really wants an answer to these two questions. And so maybe just in the event of time, sorry, everyone, just for the sake of time, yes or no, can we schedule in-person testing?
Unknown yet.
Okay.
We had hoped unknown.
Okay. And what about, can we require our students to show their faces on camera?
Unknown.
Unknown. Okay. So please, everyone, follow up with your dean. There's a lot of complexities there about people's rights and privacy, and obviously the health and safety of proctors and entering and leaving the building. So this is something that everyone is talking about. And so we're not just ignoring the question. We are actually trying to manage time. So please, deans, know that your faculty are really eager for some concrete answers to those questions.
And Shelley, let me just say that the answers to some of those questions, particularly on face-to-face exams, will be influenced strongly by CUNY. We've seen how many people we can hold in our classrooms under social distancing rules, and the numbers are minuscule. And there are also being explored centrally the possibility of secure online testing for students. And I hope that there'll be a report coming on that. I'd like to say in time for midterms, but that would be an aspirational.
Okay, thank you. The cap size, is there a dean that wants to answer that question about class cap sizes?
I'll just mention at the Zicklin School, we have a workload policy that in terms of teaching credit takes into account the class size. So if it gets to a certain level, they get extra workload credit for that. And we've always had that in place and we'll continue with that.
Thank you, Dean Huss.
I just got a note saying that Olga dais has an answer to the question on students on camera. So can you unmute yourself, Olga, and give us that answer?
Hello, everyone. Like Kathy, and like everyone, I'm glad to see you all here and hope all is well. So a few of the chairs did reach out to me on this question, and the response I received from the central office, from the Office of General Counsel in consultation with EVC Cruz is as follows, that basically, as of this moment, instructor must advise their students that they can select audio-only participation in Zoom class sessions, or can even use or access the class under a pseudonym username. Basically, right now, there is a concern for privacy, and not all students feel comfortable showing themselves in a class session, depending on, the circumstances that they're calling from. At the end of the day, a faculty member would have to have a compelling reason that they absolutely must see the student. So at that point, someone should then consult with Jim and myself, and then we would consult with our counterparts at the university. But by and large, the answer has been you can't compel them, and more importantly, you have to advise them accordingly.
Thank you, Olga. I am going to move on to staff support. We have a lot more to cover, and the questions coming in, just so we're clear, we received about 100 questions in advance, and many of the questions overlapped. And so people are asking for a handout of each specific question. And I'm surprised, because I don't think that they understand how much work everyone is doing without additional pay. But this event will be recorded, and it will be available to you on the President's page, and also on the This Week at Baruch site. So if you want to go back and go over the tape for the specifics, also please follow up. Your deans are really working very, very hard. Everyone is working very hard to communicate, and there's so much that are moving parts, and so we're still in it. Yes, adjuncts are very unfamiliar with doing unpaid work, and thank you for that note, Rebecca Smart. Staff support, and we appreciate you, Rebecca Smart, very, very much, and all of the adjuncts, which is why the first question was about adjuncts, because everyone wants to know about the security, safety, and compensation for adjuncts. Moving to staff support, also very pressing. Very, very many people in the staff would like to know when will staff be required to return to working on campus, how the college will protect staff, especially those with medical conditions who need to have direct contact with students. And the next question from Nikisha Alcindor was, is there extra support for the costs for working from home, such as for updating computers, additional utility, and Wi-Fi costs?
So let me just sort of start with I think we've talked about what the fall is going to look like. And it's going to look very much like what we've seen. And we don't have an answer for what the spring is going to look like. So I think I think we've discussed that and reviewed that. I did want to have Kenya speak a little bit about, because we realize now with our staff working remotely, that there's increased needs for support and for continuing a level of engagement that is a challenge in the remote context. And so these are some of the issues that a subcommittee of the Task Force for the Future are looking at. Olga, myself, Kenya are the champions of this. And so Kenya, maybe you want to share a little bit about that subcommittee.
Okay, very quickly, this subcommittee was created about 2 weeks ago. We had our first meeting a week ago, and what we've ascertained is we want to assess the needs of the staff, and that's all the staff, including buildings and grounds and public safety, especially because right now they're on the front line. So we will be doing outreach, data collection through a survey. And some of the things we do want to look at is what your experiences have been up until this point. And also try to ascertain what your immediate needs are and what future needs are. So we're looking at technology and telecommuting, work-life balance, health and safety, professional development and support. So once we do this survey, we get this information, we will be putting forward recommendations to the president and the task force in hopes of trying to improve your work-life balance and your professional experiences at Baruch College.
Thank you, Kenya.
So just maybe briefly on the second question, which is about concerns protecting staff, especially those with medical conditions who will have direct contact with students. Of course, in the fall, there's going to be very little direct contact with students. But I will say for the people, the essential staff that are there, for the instructors, and then in ongoing stages, I just heard something. The recording has stopped. Never mind. So anyway, let me continue. Okay, so I will continue. The campus reopening plan, again, is going to have a very detailed description of all of the health and safety protocols that we're putting in place. There's a health and safety video on Blackbaud that I encourage everyone to take a look at. We're going to require masks, health screening. We're going to have, the enhanced cleaning operations. And there's also going to be, some classes. And then we do have public safety who's there at a desk with the possibility of interaction. And we have installed some plexiglass barriers where appropriate, and we'll continue to do so. But as I said, this is going to be sort of a phased reopening. In terms of staff in vulnerable populations, both staff as well as students that have medical conditions that make them particularly vulnerable, the remote, the remote working, I think, really is one way to manage that. And certainly, as we begin to open up, increase physical presence, those remote options, telecommuting options, are still going to be in place for people. And we're going to definitely have, on the student affairs side, working with students who are particularly vulnerable, and on the HR side, continue to work with staff in the future phase outs of this.
Kathy, what I would like to add to that is
go ahead.
College, the university is totally committed to, whether it's COVID or any other medical situation, to accommodating our faculty, staff, and our students. And if a person believes they have various conditions that would not be conducive for them to come in, there's a process. You can go right now on, not about COVID specific, but our accommodations and for students' academic adjustments. So as a university, we've always been committed to providing the necessary accommodations with the appropriate medical documentation.
Right.
Olga, while you're here, this chat is blowing up, and the people want to know, are they required, is faculty required to record their classes for students?
I think it's I don't want to say required. I think it's probably a best practice that leans toward being required, because if a student needs to get the information because they were unable at a particular time, I do believe something is going to come out very specific to that, but I think it's looking like it's leaning towards they're required or close to being required, at least a best practice, because there may be a lot of very good reasons that a particular person could not get the information, but some further information should be coming out in the various academic plans on that. but I will see if I can get a pre-answer and get it back to you if they definitely went with that it should be required. I had gotten the answer on whether or not I spoke to earlier about the audios for students in attendance. So they're working on various aspects of these issues.
Wonderful, thank you. Keenan Mohan just asked about students, because students can use pseudonyms for Zoom sessions, and they wanted to know how faculty can map the names of pseudonyms. And I think the answer to that is through registering for a class. When they register for a Zoom course, they can literally list the name of their pseudonym, so the faculty can take attendance using the pseudonym instead of the student's name. Is that correct?
Author, do you know this? There has to be a way of aligning them. I'm not the technocrat here, but there has to be a way. The whole idea is that a faculty member may need to know that someone is at least present, but everybody else doesn't have to know that the person needs to be present.
So Mary, do we have a preferred name policy in our registration process? In other words, can the student put in their pseudonym or their preferred name when they register?
I think so, Mary.
I believe so.
I think so.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to student well-being and success, which is subcommittee topic number 4. Some of these questions came up, but the one, Stephanie Golub from Political Science wants to know, what's the plan for students who may need access to campus for Wi-Fi, computer labs, library resources, or for a quiet place to study? And then Susan Tenorio in Finding Performing Arts would like to know, are there emergency resources available for students who may need food or housing assistance? And the last from Lindsay Plewa from Zicklin, she would like to know, are any of the student services going to be available in person?
So I can jump in on questions 1 and 3. The first is, yes, we're making arrangements. The plan is to make available quiet study spaces for students on campus who need that. It will be by appointment only. So a student will be able to reserve a block of time, much as they do now when they can reserve study rooms in the library or whatever, to have a quiet space, most likely in the vertical campus, to work. So there will be those sorts of accommodations made. That said, as the president and provost have been saying, student services largely will continue to happen online through virtual means. And you know, our folks have set up virtual front desks. They've been holding virtual or Zoom appointments to do things like advising and counseling. So we will continue to serve students, but we'll be doing it remotely because those staff will continue to work remotely. And then I'll defer to Art King on the emergency resources.
Good morning. Thank you, Mary. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's safe and well. I hope I just got knocked off line because it's thunderstorms outside my house, but hopefully I wouldn't get knocked out in this short period. Good morning again. So as far as Mary, just as exactly what Mary said, we never close as far as student affairs is concerned. Our offices have been open from the time we went home. So if you were to call any of our numbers, whether it's disability services, the counseling center, the career center, et cetera, you will get a response between 9 and 5. So students are told that they can call our office lines and somebody will respond from at home. So we haven't been closed, but we've been really busy, particularly during the pandemic and the racial unrest in the counseling center. As a matter of fact, we even set up a focus group, Black Mental Health Matters, where we're catering to our students of color, African-American students who had concerns about the issues and wanted someone to talk to. So we're doing some work around that. Dr. Jael Amador is leading that discussion. Our student health center never closed. As a matter of fact, students are coming from far and wide to meet with our physician in the health center. And so those services will continue to be open. By the way, the counseling center is telehealth. It's not open, but the student health center has been open. It never closed, physically closed. As a matter of fact, it's open as I speak right now. And then, of course, our early learning center, the jury is still out on that in terms of waiting for CUNY to give us some directive on where we stand with the early learning centers across the network, across CUNY. But as far as we know right now, our early learning center ought to be open at the start of school to accommodate our student parents and the kids of our student parents. In terms of food security and housing security, absolutely. We are grateful to Petrie, the Eugene Lang, Freelander, and the undergraduate student body for providing resources for us to be able to offer to students who are experiencing food insecurity, housing insecurity, and other support that they might need from that perspective. Earlier on, the CARES Act took care of some of that, but this year we've seen a bumper crop, if you will, of students who are in need because obviously they've lost their part-time jobs, they've lost their jobs in particular, and some who were anticipating going to work, having graduated and anticipated going to work this summer, those jobs have been put on hold. So there's a lot of need there. We continue through our Student Emergency Fund to look for support for our students, and hopefully if you can go to that fund and offer some support as well. We'll take anything we can get because we have lots of students who are in need. So anything you can do to help, we'll certainly have that. So those are the services, and that's what we're going to be doing from the student services, student affairs perspective, making sure that we don't miss a beat where possible to be able to serve our students and serve them well.
Thank you, Art. So we're going to move on to technical support. The one very, very pressing question that we received many, many times, including on the live chat, is the question of how will the college ensure that all students, staff, and faculty have access to computers, to software, and to Wi-Fi. They also would like to know about the technical support, additional support to BCTC and to CTL, and from both of those organizations, BCTC and CTL, to assist students, faculty, and staff working from home. And finally, the question from Keith Ramming in chemistry is, will the college continue to use Blackboard, or will it migrate to another learning management system?
Okay, so with regard to making sure that students, faculty, and staff have access to computer software and Wi-Fi, first, the equipment loan program is being expanded substantially. We just received a new shipment of 1,400 Chromebooks and iPads that we've started to mail to students and faculty. In addition, we've ordered another 400 laptops and MacBooks that we're going to distribute as soon as they arrive. I need to point out that we and all other colleges and universities are facing real challenges with getting laptops delivered in time for the fall. The suppliers who were so confident that it wouldn't be a problem are now reporting delays due to shortages of components. So the whole supply chain is stressed at the moment. However, the purchasing department is doing amazing work with us to try to identify suppliers that can actually deliver in time. But we're going to keep everyone posted if we think that it's not going to make it here in time for the start of classes. We're also ordering a variety of peripherals based on inventories that were administered by the deans of the 3 schools. So right now we already have orders in place for headsets, Apple Pencils, Wacom tablets, and the list is growing. Access to software. We're working on this through 2 different methods. One is we're licensing additional software on our own and in collaboration with the university. I should point out, as sort of a supplement of an answer to an earlier question with regard to Zoom and student identity. Just before the call, I heard from CUNY that they have put through a university-wide license for Zoom because it has been up to the campuses at this point to do it. So we expect by the fall start of classes that we'll be using Zoom credentials that are based on CUNY login credentials. I bring that up because it should be easier to associate students with their Blackboard identities. So I'm going to follow up with regard to that earlier question in light of this new development. The other way that we're going to provide access to software is BCTC is about to release a method of remote access to the computers in our main student computing lab, the Kaplan Center. This is going to allow students to access all of the software that is on those computers without having to go to the lab on site. And that will support about 250 simultaneous users. With regard to internet access, as Mary Gorman reported, the college, as part of the reopening plan, is proposing to designate a few spaces on campus for quiet student study and reading, and those will also provide access to internet connectivity for students. I should make clear, so that there isn't any misunderstanding, the proposed reopening plan does not include the library space being open in the fall. We will continue to provide our services remotely, and we expect to have a few staff on campus at certain times to perform some functions. All of that will be outlined in the reorganization plan once it's approved and shared. With regard to staffing, in the short term, we haven't been able to add staff in BCTC. What we have been able to do is reassign some staff whose primary responsibilities in normal times would have to be performed on site. We've temporarily shifted them to help assist at the help desk. Longer term staffing is a critical issue. The need for adequate staffing to support users is a topic of serious discussion in the task force subcommittee. We're in luck that the consultants working with the task force also understand the deficit position that we've been working from. So I'm hopeful that we're going to see some additional resources down the road as a result of the pivot in the planning to the long term. I realize the questions were phrased in terms also of the Center for Teaching and Learning. I really can't speak for them, but I know that Allison Lair Samuels is pretty much in the same position. No additional staff at this time, with an extraordinary demand for support, which is not sustainable. And I know that the task force is aware of that as well. The question about will we be changing learning management systems? There will be no change with regard to Blackboard within the next year. The university's contract with Blackboard doesn't expire until December 31st of 2021. There is a university steering committee that has been specifically charged with making a recommendation to Executive Vice Chancellor Cruz regarding the future direction that we should take with respect to a learning management system. And I know that Professor Kanan Mohan serves on that committee.
Thank you. Arthur, I just saw a shout out, since, you know, very often you all get the tough questions. I just wanted you to know that Sonali Harzarika wanted to make sure you got a special shout out of thanks, because she says that you've done an amazing job helping faculty. And I'm sure that extends to many, many, many people who are on this call. It's also worth noting, responding to Giselle Regatau, she wanted to know if there's an email address for the student services. And the answer to that question is there's a COVID-19 update page that is also on the homepage, the front page of the Baruch College homepage, that is always updated. So if you needed to, if you would like to direct your students somewhere for a place for resources, that might be a good place to start. The last thing I'm going to say before I move to the open.
Shelley?
Yeah. Yes.
It depends on what the issue is, because there's also the Dean of Students at baruch.edu as well. That's pretty much where we then channel people to their appropriate places. So they're welcome to use Dean of Students at baruch.cuny.edu as well.
And they can use that email address, Dean of Students.
That's right.
Okay, so there you go. That's probably even more specific, Giselle Regatel. There's an email address you can add to your syllabi, deanofstudents@baruch.cuny.edu. And we all know that Dean Art King and his team are really, really working 24/7 to support the students. So there you have it. I will say, I got another message here, President Wu, that we do have the space to run over a little bit, and I know there are at least 3 pressing questions that I collated from the pre-submitted questions for our open discussion. And so what I'd like to do is just read those 3 questions. They're big, big questions. Many, many, many people ask these questions. I'm going to read them very slowly, and then we'll see what the cabinet and President Wu have to say in response. These 3 questions are not necessarily connected, but they're big enough that we'll see how we get some answers. So the first question is from Elliot Axelrod, Carl Lang, Douglas Parker, and many, many more people. They want to know, thinking about the college's future beyond the coming academic year, what will be the long-term impact of remote work as well as hybrid and online education at Baruch? Some of the forms of that question came in. Will this be like southernnewhampshire.edu? Is it going to be University of Phoenix, college.com, etc.? The next question we got was, how will the administration seek faculty input concerning budget decisions and allotments across the schools? Specifically, this is a question for you, President Wu, from Charlotte Brooks. Will you refuse donations that would seek to curtail academic freedom? The next big question from many people, including Sandra Kuprat, Elizabeth Merrick, Kareem Mumford, and Michael Seltzer, is what is the college's plan to address anti-Black racism, anti-Asian racism, and the longstanding diversity and equity issues, including hiring more Black and Latinx faculty, as well as maintaining and supporting the enrollment of students of color? There you have it. Floor is yours.
No, thank you. Thank you for these questions, and very insightful questions. And I guess start with the first one in terms of thinking about the college's future beyond the current academic year, and the impact of remote work and hybrid learning and everything else. So first of all, I guess I'll give you a little plug of my blog. And actually, I'm working on my second blog, and this is exactly the topic. Of course, I'm not going to sort of cop out and saying, you know, that's the answer. And hopefully my presentation at the beginning gave you a little bit of a glimpse of the things that we are thinking about. I guess my overall thinking is sort of along the following lines. And one is, number one, everybody's working really, really hard in the past couple of months. Number one, to pivot to this virtual environment of learning. And I know that a lot of you are exhausted and has been working day and night to kind of adjust yourself to this new environment. And that is really producing some amazing results. But overall, in the long term, we need to have a more sustainable way of thinking about how do we blend the virtual working environment with the environment that we're more used to. So there is a precise balance, I would say, for the consideration of the immediate concerns in terms of what's going to happen next month, in the fall, in the coming spring, and the balance of thinking about our long-term future, and are some of the things that some of the efforts that we put in today could have a long-term benefit for the future of Baruch. And the one thing come to mind is, as you know, that Baruch has always been under severe physical space limitations. So this is not a problem that happened yesterday. This is a decade-long issue that we are dealing with, or struggling with. And so some of the solutions might be to think a little bit more creatively about how do we deliver our mission with multiple modes of methods, if you will. Now we are kind of getting ourselves practice or hone our skills or flex our muscle, whatever analogy that you are you prefer, but to get a little bit more used to different modes of working and coming back into the long-term future, perhaps we will have a little bit more options at our disposal of delivering our mission. And that's my hope. And I think I do want us to think constantly of balancing of your immediate concerns for the near future and think about how could that potentially benefit our long-term future by being able to maybe leverage what we have learned in the current environment. And that goes with everything we do operationally, everything we do in the classroom. And I speak quite a bit about how could this potentially opening up the repertoire of tools that may be available for the faculty and for us to engage the student, engage the community, and so on, which is basically along that line of thinking. And so this is going to be an ongoing dialogue. And obviously I don't have all the answers, and I have a lot of questions, and I sort of pose the question of how do we do this and how do we do this together? And I hope that you could contribute your ideas as well. Now, in terms of the second question, in terms of the budget process and so on, I know the big elephant in the room is that we know that there is going to be big budget challenges coming our way, and how are we going to deal with it, and how are we going to involve the faculty and the staff and across the school in that decision making, and so you know, given the time, I'll give you a fairly brief answer, but I guess that there are two things that I want to point out. One is that we see a continued decline of public funding to large public universities. And the university I just came from, the budget of the university 20 years ago was 75% coming from the state. By the time I left, it's 21%. And how did it happen? Well, multiple recessions, budget cuts, couple of times later, 75% become 21%, right? So in other words, this is what happens when the public funding gradually decrease. And frankly, we will have to think about, from the budget point of view, how do we move forward with different types of models. And this is happening all around the country, and I just want to put it in this context. It's not just about COVID. It's not just about the current budget cut. It is a continued trend, and so we do need to think about this holistically, and in terms of how we are going to handle our budget model, and do we need to think about different way of handling the budget. And in terms of transparency, absolutely. And everything that I do, I would like to share with the campus community in every step of the way. And we're just at the very, very beginning of that process. But I do want us to, again, balance that short-term thinking about how do we manage the emergency in front of us, and also think about how could we leverage that for a better long-term future. And I'm, and in terms of fundraising and so on, and actually one of the things that I did, again, in my previous job as a provost, actually spent 2 years developing probably one of the most comprehensive give acceptance policy in the country. It was actually covered by the Washington Post, by New York Times, and so on and so forth, and triggered by a set of events. But it's very unusual for a provost to be the champion of developing give acceptance policy. And the reason is precisely because of the importance of maintaining academic freedom and donor influence and so on and so forth, and keep it at check. And so for those of you who are interested, I'll be happy to share with you. And we have looked at the best practices all around the country and develop some of the most comprehensive give acceptance policy in the country. And I'll be happy to bring some essence of that to Baruch, which I truly believe. And now in terms of the college planning addressing anti-Black racism and anti-Asian sentiments and so on, and also the long-term issue of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And this is something that I have always been a strong advocate for, and not just because of my own background, but simply because I believe that's the right thing to do. And this is also what the university is all about. A more diverse environment also promote a more intellectually vibrant environment for learning. And not to mention the broader agenda for higher education that I pointed to in terms of how do we as a public institution serve the society in a way that we're supposed to, rather than only students who can afford the education. So in order for us to do that well, obviously we need to have faculty members and staff and administrators that reflect that diversity in our population of students, of the people we serve. So as you know that the previous president, Dr. Wallerstein, has commissioned a presidential council on diversity, inclusion, and Sam Johnson is co-chairing that with the staff members. So we are very much planning to. They have been actually hard at work, and I would be very much relying on their recommendations on very specific, concrete plans of how do we improve our way. And I know each one of the three colleges also have put forward special initiatives aiming at increasing diversity of the faculty. And I just actually attended one of the meetings at the Zicklin Schools Advisory Board on that topic of how to increase the diversity of the faculty of the school. And I know the Weissman School as well as the Mark School has a similar effort put forward. So this is something that's very important to me and certainly very important for Baruch moving forward, and that we can serve our students better and deliver our mission much better. So I hope that helps to answer some of these questions, and I'll be happy to entertain these questions moving forward. And Shally, I guess back to you. And I think we are reaching the end, and I guess we are kind of running a little bit over, hopefully not too much.
Yes, we are running a little bit over, and thank you, President Wu. Just some quick answers to some questions that came up in the chat. Zolicia Abotsi, she wanted to know if staff members could have access to MS Teams besides Zoom. And the answer to that question is yes. The Teams platform, this is the answer I have for you. The Teams platform is available from the Quick Links drop-down menu on the Baruch homepage in the Office 365 suite. There's a lot of great collaboration tools there, and Arthur has been a real champion keeping Baruch ahead of the curve. So you can, in fact, use MS Teams and other collaboration tools that are in the Office 365 suite. All faculty and staff have access to those things. Someone wanted to know about hotspots, faculty, if they could obtain hotspots for teaching online. I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe Arthur, you have a quick answer, and if not, we'll say goodbye. Arthur?
Because it came up in the inventories that the deans had done, we're now investigating the feasibility. Thank
you. And on that note, I will say thank you, President Wu, for this incredible moment of rapid fire communication in a moment that is also so much in flux and changing all the time. Thanks also, Provost McCarthy, the entire president's cabinet and staff, the communications team, and the faculty and the staff who showed up and were very patient with the condensation of your questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we look forward to more opportunities to find solutions and new ideas and innovation in this moment of incredible transition. So thank you.
And thank you, Shelley and Professor Eversley. Did a remarkable job of moderating the town hall. And so you may be rewarded by asked to do this in the future. Talking about which, I do want to say, we will probably have another town hall meeting sometime in probably early September after the task force release their phase 2 report. And then moving forward, if this is a effective form of getting everybody together and share some of the ideas and so on, we will certainly be open to do this more frequently or in other formats and so on. And so thank you again very much for participating, and we look forward to seeing you in the near future.
Thank you. And you'll be able to find this recording very soon on This Week at Baruch and also on President Wu's homepage. So please, everyone, stay well, be safe, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you.